Oh, Louisa, welcome.
Thank you.
Could you give a little introduction about yourself, who you are, what you do?
So my name's Louise. I've lived in Mallorca for 21 years. I came here after deciding to have a change, working in corporate for the last 7 or 8 years in the UK as a director of human. I had some friends here. I had a boyfriend here who was a chef on yachts, and he was based from here. And I'd been over a few times, and I thought, I think I'm going to quite like this. So I took voluntary redundancy from my job and came here and thought I'll give it a year, see what happens, then go back. Anyway, 21 years later, said boyfriend is no more. But I did meet my partner here, and so that's where the journey began.
And what do you do now in Mallorca?
I have recently set up my own business. It's called Business Access, and it primarily focuses on businesses that are fairly new, they want to grow or they want to establish, focus on their structure, their foundations, the basics essentially of what they do, looking at their business model and trying to restructure it in line with what they want to do, what their goals are, what their core of their business is, what their target market is, and financial stability as well. If they're newly set up or want to set up, so they've got somebody's got an idea, or businesses that are in the process of wanting to grow, to stabilize that business.
And do you see a lot of businesses that are stuck in that process?
There's quite a big challenge for most businesses, because most businesses I work with are owner-led businesses or founder-led businesses. And that creates a lot of overwhelm, a lot of stress, a lot of time spent doing things which don't necessarily relate to the original business idea or goal. And that's fine, because the business might have changed, it might have moved, it might have grown. But then to reflect back on a new structure or a new set of goals or a new set of reasons or of outputs for clients is important. And reevaluate the target market, and then reevaluate the financial stability, your pricing, and all those other things. I think the one thing that businesses miss a lot here is the financial stability, and really looking at where their revenue's coming from, where their costs are, where their expenses are, and evaluating what their profit levels they want them to be, as well as
what they really are. Yeah. And how do you help them manage that specifically?
Actually identifying where their costs are, where they're going. It might be something really simple, like say in a manufacturing business, which is a business I know well. People are ordering supplies all the time. Nobody's taking control of the stock here. There's a lot of wastage. In a service industry business, it might just be simple things like, are you getting best value for money for your mobile phone contracts? Are you putting the right expenses through your accounts so you can reduce your tax bills? Yeah.
What are some of the typical outcomes that you see from the work that you're doing for your clients?
What I do see is primarily it's saving time, energy, and resources. So, and particularly when it's outside of what your core business is, because your core business may well be very structured and very stable with concrete workflows, but when you go outside of that to secondary business requests. So it's trying to create those efficiencies within a business to save owners time so they can concentrate on growing their business and focusing on the strategy, the planning, the growth, and the outputs.
And what inspired you to do that, to take that decision? Because you had another business before?
Yes.
What was your turning point where you said, okay, I'm going to quit this and this is what I'm going to do?
I had a manufacturing business with my partner for 17 years here on the island, manufacturing furniture for the very glorious super yachts. And for various reasons, we decided we would close that business and look at new ventures. From my point of view, I wanted to do something slightly different. So I spent about a year retraining in various other unrelated things, just because I enjoyed them. Then to set up a school, a brand new international private school near to where I live. I got asked to set up the business side of that. And that was probably my turning point. When you run a business, you get stuck in it a little bit, and sometimes you work a little bit on automatic pilot and you don't necessarily always think about what you're doing and how to make changes. and make it more profitable potentially. Exactly the same things as I try and teach our client to do. But when you're inside it, taking a step back from it is quite difficult.
And you can't see it like clearly anymore because you're so much in it, and then somebody extra having that view and taking you back to what matters. It's really important.
Well, school was different because it was a new industry for me to work in. There was a whole set of new rules and regulations that I had to learn very fast. I had 1 month to get a building from an empty building without even a whiteboard or a chair or a desk or a seat.
Wow.
To there was a team of us. It wasn't just me on my own, but the rest of the team focused primarily on the teaching side, the educational side, whereas I focused on the business side.
Yeah.
So it was all the practicalities, the operations, the HR, the finance, the things you don't think about. Getting cleaners in, making sure we have somebody, making sure we've got catering.
Yeah.
All of these things. So I had 4 weeks to do that. So that was quite a challenge, but it was one of those challenges because it's so outside your comfort zone. You think, oh, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I had a very steep learning curve, and I set myself a goal and a target, which I achieved, was to stay there for as long as it took for me to set up all the policies and procedures, all the workflows, make sure everything was running correctly. I also looked after reception. I also looked after marketing. I also looked after IT. And so I managed all the non-teaching side of things. And I got to a point where I thought, okay, I've done what I set out to do. Now I want to put all the skills that I've learned throughout my whole career and put them into practice. So I decided to set up business consulting, putting all that information and all that knowledge and all that skill into practice.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me that excitement when I watch a business go from maybe not functioning as well as it could to turning it around, where the owner has more time, the staff have more time, everybody feels comfortable in what they're doing. Decisions can be made in various parts of the business. Workflows are set up so anybody can walk in the door, read them, and know exactly what to do from the minute they start. And that all saves time, energy, effort, stress, sleepless nights.
And maybe also bringing the joy in doing business back for the owner, because once they know like everything is settled and there's a flow and it's going smooth, they start enjoying running their business again rather than just running after everything and everybody.
I like how you put that. I love that. Yeah. And in fact, I'm going to use it if that's okay. I might use it for my next marketing campaign, bring the joy back into it. And that was a brilliant way of looking at it. I love that.
And I'm also curious because you tried the app that I built. So I built an app called NAR. And maybe just also for the listeners, just tell a little bit about why NAR, because I get that question a lot. So the app is an AI engine that helps find your stories that we often have buried somehow, that we think that don't really matter anymore. While there are our stories and there are our experiences are where we are now and what shaped us and what made us make decisions in life. And I found that the more we tell stories, the more we're able to connect to each other. But also in business, the more we're able to share our real and vulnerable stories, the easier it is for people to really get to know us and not just the mask of our presence, of our identity. For many years, as I was in business, I held several positions with titles that gave me some status, and I often identified with those titles. And it also took me many years to get rid of that and to really feel like, no, I don't need to introduce myself through a title. I don't even need any title at all. Who I am in business is no different than who I am in person. So, and that's my ultimate goal, what I wanted to achieve. And so I found that storytelling is a way of connecting each other, connecting in business, but also it's a big sales accelerator if we use it in the right way. And then narrative is something that is like a thread of everything, all our experiences, all our stories that we have, and that connects what we're doing in business. So that's one thing, narrative. And then the other thing is in Dutch and in German, we have a nar. And a nar is a jester. It's the fool. Okay. So that's the translation is a nar. And I really like that because when I was reading about it, the nar used to be the person or the jester in the ancient times in the court, where the only person that was allowed to speak the truth. and allow to make jokes and to say whatever comes through their mind and to really tell stories. So it also has a little bit affiliation with that. Like I wanted it to be about the NAR and the narrative. So that's the app. I built it through using AI. I put it in the market and I just let people use it to see what comes up. Was there any particular story in your life that you remember? And it can be a story from your childhood. It can be something that still sticks with you, maybe in work, professionally. Is there anything that you think like, okay, that's a story that had a major impact on my life?
Yeah, my mother was born in the 1900s. 1920, which seems an awfully long time ago. And as she was growing up, women had to stop work when they got married. And she did have a good job. She was quite an intelligent woman. She didn't have a huge education, but she had to stop work. But prior to that, she wanted to be a fashion designer. She was great at art. She loved clothes. Her mother made clothes for the local wealthy families in her area. And she would take the offcut of all the nice silks and things, and she would make her own clothes for her own dolls at the time. In those times, you had to pay to become an apprentice, be able to follow those sorts of careers. And as a woman particularly, it was discouraged. And in her particular situation, she couldn't afford to do that. Her family couldn't afford it. And so she went to work at the age of 15, 16, whatever she was, straight after school. As a typist, office manager, and things that, quite honestly, she wasn't very interested in, but really was quite good at.
Yeah.
Anyway, suffice to say, she got married, had kids. She decided she would give up work at that point and become to look after the home, look after her children. And that's what she did from then on, from 1962, 63 onwards. Those opportunities weren't available to her. And I think about her sometimes, and I think if she'd had the opportunities that I have, then what would she have done with them? And I was born in the 1960s, which makes me particularly old. But I went through all of the feminist movements of the 1970s in the more formative years, where women could do everything, but there was a certain amount of sacrifices. So women didn't tend to get married. They didn't tend to have children. There were certain sacrifices you made. So whilst my mum made sacrifices because she didn't have the opportunities, these women were making sacrifices because they did have certain opportunities. They were trying to push through what they call the glass ceiling. I'm sure it still exists. But they made their own sets of sacrifices, and that was generally family, partner. And by the 1980s and early 90s, then it became a movement of women could have both. And so that sort of shaped me. My mum didn't have those opportunities, but I did. So what am I going to do with them? The second thing that shaped what I've done all my life.
Wait, can I just ask you one more question about this? So I think it's beautiful. Actually, strikes me is that you're telling it from the perspective of your mother. So what shaped you, the story. It's actually you talk about your mom. So I've asked this question to many people, and they go like, yeah, and there's this and this and this about me, and I had this. So I find it it's never counted anyone that said, well, the story that shaped me, it's actually coming from another person. So just wanted to say that. But I think also like what you described, in what way, like you knew, okay, you have all those opportunities that your mom didn't have. Was it something that then caused you to be more ambitious, or to say like, okay, but now I have these opportunities, so I have to make it happen because
Absolutely.
I'm giving those opportunities? Yeah. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you did with that thought?
So for me, I had those opportunities. I had a good education. I had the opportunity to go to university more than once, and so I almost felt under an obligation to not live out her life for her vicariously, but to use those opportunities in a way which is much more productive and much more successful. And in fact, I went in the opposite direction for many years. And I had a career, I had a good job, I got promoted, I focused 100% on my career and climbing up the ladder to become successful. My goal of success purely was becoming the best at what I was, becoming at the top level that I could get to within companies, businesses, however that looks. And so that was my sole goal. So in some respects, I went the opposite and sacrificed other things in order to get to the point where I felt that I could prove that I was successful and I had used my opportunities to their maximum advantage. And clearly you get to the point where you're in your mid to late 30s, your biological clock is somewhat ticking, and you make a decision at that point. And that was, it wasn't because my biological clock was ticking. There was many reasons why I decided to move to Mallorca. And it wasn't actually with the intention of having children at all. It was more the intention of doing something different and with the intention of setting up my own business. I liked the island. I thought it was somewhere beautiful to live, and it was totally different than commuting 4 hours a day to London and back from my house.
Wow.
And so I came here, and then I was very lucky to meet my partner, who happened to do a job that we could combine his skills at furniture making with my business skills, and we can make a successful business. So that's what we did. So in fact, I actually fulfilled the second part of my ambition. Was once I'd got to the top where I could get no further in corporate, then I used those skills to set up myself and my own business. And at which point we decided that we would see if we could start a family at the same time, which thankfully, even though I was a little bit older, we were able to do with relatively little, which was relatively easy. We didn't have to struggle in that department. And suddenly, I'm not that natural as a mother. And the first few years of combining a business with having a child
It's a lot of responsibility.
is a lot of responsibility. In all honesty, I found I was a little resentful because my husband could go to work. He had a normal life. I didn't. My whole life turned upside down instantaneously.
That's the sacrifice we do.
And it was a sacrifice, and I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it to have such a great impact. And so I wasn't natural mother material. However, I do have a beautiful daughter who's now 19. So in spite of my lack of motherly tendencies, she's worked out well.
So I told you why I built this app and what my mission is about it. And you tried our app.
I have.
And I'm really curious about your experience of trying the app. Can you tell a little bit about it? What was it like for you?
Yeah, so I've been, like everybody, writing my content and on AI for quite some time and then tweaking it. I will fully admit to that. Yes, it's okay, but it becomes a little bit, the stories become a little bit the same every time you post things, and what you read from other people, the stories become a little bit the same.
What were you using before, GPT or?
GPT, also more recently a bit of Claude as well. And something that I remembered from when I was working at the school, the girl who did my marketing manager, she said to me, you have to emotionally engage with people for anybody to notice what you're doing. Emotionally engaged. And I remember that. And I thought, these aren't really emotionally engaging, but still, it's quicker and easier than trying to write everything yourself. As much as I love writing, I just don't have time. So I'd seen you a few times on LinkedIn. I thought, oh, this is really interesting. This is really different. And I'm not that comfortable with exposing my inner self, my thoughts, feelings, and I'd rather not. And I thought, this is really interesting because he is exposing some things that I would feel incredibly uncomfortable with, incredibly uncomfortable with. And it's not what society expects you to do. They expect you to hide all of that and appear to be the most successful person ever. And so I thought, this is really interesting. And when I have the opportunity, you released your app, the opportunity, thankfully, and thank you, to use it. The narrative was totally different that was produced. And in fact, at some points, it made me cry. And so I started off just doing very small things. And then I thought, I'm going to write a story, or I'm going to write, just like a short narrative.
Yeah.
And it produced, I can't remember the title exactly, but it was A Woman's Journey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I read that.
A short narrative.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was just, had pinpointed me down to the very detail. And I just went, wow. And it's not often I go, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
And what I liked was, you get the normal prompts, which are very structured, very clear, very composed, and your prompts are equally well structured and clear and well composed. But the prompts are different. It makes you think, like the questions you've asked me today, it makes you really think into yourself. It makes you reevaluate yourself. It brings back memories that you may well have buried, some good, some not so good, and really makes you begin to understand how you've gone from being born to where you are now, 50 plus years later. And that's what I loved about it. And I love that the narrative was it sounded more like me.
Yeah.
It felt more like me, rather than what normally you get.
I'm so happy to hear that you share that. And also that it brought up something that triggered an emotion. I mean, not that you cried, but I think...
I did. I did.
No, I'm not saying that I'm happy that you cried, but I think it's sometimes like, especially nowadays, I feel like, things get a bit flattened. And I also see like some fake vulnerability that people are trying to take pictures crying or shoot themselves in a way just to get the attention. But then I feel like, but the whole essence is that I think with stories, especially the stories that shaped us, is that we also can process them, and that when we share them and somebody reads them, it opens up the opportunity for them to be able to allow themselves to also share what they experience.
Yeah.
And that way we can all learn from each other. And I feel like the more we do that, the more we can be inspired by each other's stories and each other's narratives. And that brings what I have in mind, what I would like to see, like more connection to each other. And
which goes back to if you have an emotional connection with it, then I mean, in terms of the stark reality of writing content or posts for social media, then somebody else is going to connect with that too on an emotional level. And so from a more practical point of view, not only does it help you connect emotionally with yourself, but it also means that somebody else will connect emotionally with that as well.
Yeah.
And it's more likely to read your story, and it's more likely to have a more memorable impact.
Personally, since I've been sharing more of my stories, two things happened for me and that I didn't expect. So I got to connect with people, like really, like I connect now with you, but I had more people sending me messages through LinkedIn, on WhatsApp, and really saying like, it's something, I was so inspired by your story. And then people that I don't know, that I normally wouldn't know or wouldn't get in touch with. And I think it's opened up, like you're immediately in a very true connection, like the performance, the mask that we normally wear in business is not there anymore. So I feel like, that is something that stories can do for us. And you said, you mentioned that you read something that I wrote, a piece of content that I wrote, that made you think like, wow, she's really sharing that openly. I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah.
What was that? Do you remember?
I can't remember what the post is, but I do remember the one you wrote yesterday about the boardroom.
Yes.
And it was something similar.
Yeah.
It was being in a situation where you feel fundamentally uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And how you react to it and what you do with that, and how it impacts you longer term. And when you go back to reevaluate it, you told somebody the truth.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't like the truth because it exposed their vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Not yours, theirs. But you were the messenger, and so therefore you were the one who was at fault.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility for your own actions, taking responsibility for your own work and for the outcomes of that doesn't happen as often as it should. And that yesterday's did make me think about it. Going, we've all been in that position where in front of everybody you've been told you're not good enough, or you've been told for some reason that you have failed, and most people don't react well. I don't think you did either, but ultimately you look back and you say, well, actually, what did I learn from that? And I don't think you'd say anything at the moment. You're just either too embarrassed or too...
I was shocked.
Totally shocked. When exactly. Shocked to even think about what the impact is. The lessons you learn from it.
So for that particular experience that I had in that meeting room where I was literally hired to help them grow the business, and I found so many inconsistencies and gaps, and the data didn't match up, and it didn't... It was as if they had these demo sprint meetings every, 3-4 weeks. And then I looked at all those presentations and I went through it, and it was all made up. And it was, and I didn't understand, did nobody ever look at that? There was a team of data analysts, but they were only doing the reports. They didn't think about the data.
Absolutely.
And it's, we're not talking about small numbers. It was a big company. There were a few hundred people were working there. And then such a big gap, such a big mistake. And I found it in the data. And then with the data analyst, I verified all the data. I tracked all the sources. And I also found a solution how we could solve it. So I was like, yeah, let's go to that meeting. Let's present this. And he's going to be so happy of what I found and how they can improve it. He saw it was true. So that's why he got so furious. And there was one other person in the meeting room. He was the VP revenue. And actually, it was part of his job, what I found. So he just wisely didn't say anything. And he just sat there as if he wasn't even in the room. Yeah. So if you're a woman and there's a man with a lot of authority and he lets it out on you and he starts shouting aggressively. I was even scared he's going to attack me. He was that mad. And that's the last thing that you expect. And honestly, I didn't think about that story anymore. My husband knows it. I told it to him and maybe to a few friends. It was the most crazy thing that happened that time. But then I started with the app as I was testing it. And then it somehow surfaced that story through being in that conversation and the questions. And I was like, oh yeah, and this happened and that happened. And then details came back. And I think wow, maybe more people have experienced that. And honestly, I hesitated. Should I really share it? What if that CEO and what if other people from that company, because they know it's about them, right? What if they are reading it? But I was like, no, I don't care about them. I care about maybe there's other people that feel now that there's a permission for them to share their stories and to be more open and because of that, process it and make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. I think the more open we are, the more awareness there is about that, the less it will happen. You bring things to the surface, and so that actually, and you said something before that, feeling comfortable about sharing it online. Do I feel very comfortable? No, but I also think about the upside of it. When I share it, maybe people feel relieved. Though I think that my perspective shifted from when I started posting on LinkedIn again, last year, November. I was only going to post things that will not even grow my business. I don't care about that, but that are true to me and that I feel there are things that happen and that have a lesson. And ever since I've been doing it, I think the most beautiful things happen. So
I think because sharing your vulnerability is generally perceived as being weak, and I'm not. I'm not a huge feminist. I believe in women and I support women, but I am not fanatically feminist. As a woman, particularly at that boardroom, exposing your vulnerability means weakness. That's how it's perceived. And so you're encouraged not to expose those vulnerabilities. You have to be 3 times as strong as anybody else in that room.
Exactly.
And you are not allowed to expose any weaknesses.
Yeah.
In actual fact, exposing vulnerabilities is quite often a sign of strength, because you recognize in yourself that you have got vulnerabilities, and by recognizing them, then you can make decisions based around that to work with those vulnerabilities as opposed to against them.
What do you think is necessary for, well, women, but I think for humans in general, professionals, to be able to expose vulnerabilities, to be able to overcome that fear of being seen as weak, maybe? Yeah. What do you think is necessary?
I think slowly, it's like every movement and every shift there has been certainly throughout my lifetime so far, and probably throughout history. Every shift takes time to embed. It has to almost go from one extreme to the other, so that we're all sharing things that are overly vulnerable, maybe. So almost has to go from one extreme of no vulnerability to the other, which is too much vulnerability, to find the medium in between. And if you look out throughout history and throughout my experiences, that's always been the case. You have an extreme, and then you have the other extreme, and then somewhere in the middle is a balance of both, whether that's the feminists of the 70s or with the Me Too movement right now, one extreme and the other extreme have to then meet somewhere in the middle and create a balance. So I think by sharing those stories and continuing to promote the fact that sharing vulnerability does not mean weakness, does not mean that you're a pushover, does not mean that people can treat you any differently. It just means that you recognize yourself better, which can only be a good thing. And I think this is probably something that women will adapt to quicker than men. But hopefully we will see both, because those vulnerabilities are in all of us. It doesn't matter whether a male, female, or whatever we are, whatever gender, whatever direction we are, those vulnerabilities are there in all of us. It'll be interesting to see whether it becomes more adapted to all aspects of society, as opposed to only.
Was there one particular story that surfaced for you through using the app that you maybe forgot about?
What did surface was the journey I've been on. Not necessarily a specific story or a specific incident, but it was really the journey I've come from and to, and how I've got from. And you forget the bits in between, you know, that all the things that you've done. And I think it was the way that this story became written through the app connected the dots for me. And perhaps something I hadn't really recognized or seen, connected the patterns, it connected the dots and created and almost like an analysis. That's something that you probably don't often do yourself.
Obviously, it is built with AI, but it's also built with storytelling frameworks, with my experience in building customer-centric systems. So I really fed it with a lot of my personal data, my personal knowledge, frameworks, books. I literally trained it for 2 months on storytelling. So also the prompts, like you will see, there's different categories. You can choose whether you want to use it for LinkedIn, for a pitch, for a sales deck, for an elevator pitch in a networking event. Like, you can save which use case, and then it will adjust and use different frameworks for every type of either content or thing you want to produce with it. And it is AI. So personally, I'm a big fan of AI, and I'm amazed with my technical skills, what I could even build in a few days and then train it and improve it. So I love the opportunity, but I also think that, AI is also a bit of a threat, especially in the way we do business, in all the generic output that we have. Another threat I see is that every newcomer can build a business and sound as credible as somebody with 20 or 30 years of experience. Yeah. There's no difference anymore. How do you differentiate yourself in this world where everything, especially somebody who has a little bit of knowledge of skills, can adapt so much faster and is able to grow faster? So I'm curious how you see that.
So I see AI as a huge benefit. A huge benefit to all of us. And in fact, I see it as a good thing that it levels the playing field. So anybody can actually start up a business, for example, or has the skills to do what they want to do. So without it being prohibitively expensive. So only those with wealth, with big companies can do it. I watched a seminar over the weekend from an AI seminar for 3 days over the weekend.
Which one was it?
It was Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, and they were promoting particularly, well, basically said, and I'm going to use their example, when farmers first had a tractor, it was so expensive, most farmers couldn't afford it. And so it was only those wealthy farmers or those farmers that could borrow the money who could afford it. Most individuals couldn't.
Yeah.
AI makes it different. So it levelizes the playing field because most people can afford it. I just set up a subscription with Claude yesterday and it was €60 for the year. Most people can afford that. So it levels off the playing field. You don't have to be wealthy, influential, somebody who's in the top 5%, 1% of society. So it gives more opportunity. That's the first thing. But I do agree with you. The second thing is that everybody can do it, which means that you don't have to have any skill, any background, any history, any training, any real education, background, however that looks, whatever it is that you need to do what you're setting up. And so it's hard to differentiate who's credible and who's not. And it's also hard to differentiate you as a business and what's your unique selling point. What makes you different to everybody else who's out there as a marketing consultant? What makes me different as a business consultant? There are thousands and thousands of both. Where do you differentiate? And where you actually differentiate is your experiences. And this is where your app becomes quite important, the storytelling app, because those are your experiences. It highlights those experiences, which makes you different from the next person. And if those stories and the results and the outcomes that you're looking for coincide with what somebody else is looking for, there's your unique market. And so I see a mixture of both. I think that AI is very important for every business. And it's something that I'm working on myself at the minute, quite hard. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, but we'll get there.
What would you like to do with AI? What are you trying to achieve?
I would, on a personal level, I want to scale my business. And I can do that much quicker, much easier with the help of AI. And on a different level, I think that it helps me produce better documentation. It helps me produce better workflows. It helps me produce things better than I can do it myself. But without the knowledge and skill behind you, you can do it. But you won't necessarily know if it works or if it's any good. And I likened it to, so I recently set up Startup Guide to Mallorca.
Oh, nice.
Which is a document, a standalone document, which is everything you need to know about setting up a business in Mallorca. And I'm not talking about business models. I'm talking about on a very practical level.
Entity level.
What Modelo does this mean? When do you need a gestor? When do you need to go to an abogado if you need one at all? What does an assessor laboral do? All those things that people need to know.
We need to know that.
How everything fits into each other. How everything fits into each other and why everything's important. And what's important for you? Do you need a licencia de apertura? Do you need a licencia, the other one, whatever it's called? All of those things. So I set this up and I used ChatGPT to set it up. And the prompt was, set me up a startup guide to setting up as self-employed in Mallorca, not an SL company or a limited company, as self-employed, purely as a
Autonomo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Autonomo.
Autonomo.
And it came back and it was great. And it set a whole framework up. And I'm going, oh, this is fantastic. And as I'm reading through it, I think this is great. You know, it's got all the right knowledge. This is the second time I've done the same exercise, by the way. I've done it for a friend of mine who wanted to set up. So I knew what to look for. Yeah. And it was fantastic. It was all flowed. It all had set everything out in categories. It had even done an index. It had even done a glossary of terms. And then it's very nice to you and says, oh, without your skill and expertise, you wouldn't know this. You are a fantastic human being. And I love all of that. Feed my ego.
That's what it does really well. Right?
Yes, I love it. It never tells you you're bad at something. So now I've got a document which I'm comfortable with that covers all those aspects. And now it's become extraordinarily long, but not everything applies to everybody. But you can pick it up in whatever aspect of your business you're in, whatever time you're at, and certainly for setting up a business, what you need to know. It comes with me included if you want to, but it is standalone as well. You can just work your way through it.
So you were already talking about using the power of AI, but still using our human capacity and your human skill, knowledge, experience. So you see that
it gave me the time to do that. Yeah. So it gave me the time. So rather than me spending my energy thinking about a framework, thinking about what it looks like, thinking about the very fundamentals of it, that's where my energy would go. Thinking about how to write it out, thinking about what structure looked good, what sentence structure, whether it was the right spelling, all of that sort of thing. It gave me the time to look at the content of it. And that's where both combined is a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
It's not just about replacing humans, and I don't believe it will replace humans. No. Certain jobs maybe. Yeah. But so the mundanity.
What do you think is necessary for that? Like, you have a good outcome with it because you didn't accept what it created, and you put your own knowledge into it, and you fed it, and then you trained it basically, and then something valuable came out. But that's not always the case. A lot of people are using tools like Chat and Claude and just letting it do the work for them, whether it be content, but it could also be anything, campaign setup. Like, you could even generate business ideas and then have like 20 of amazing ideas, research a niche, deep dive into that niche, fine tune it, find product market fit, build a prototype, build your entire website copy, your website. I'm just saying, like,
I'm hoping it's going to do all of that for me.
I also see, like, for many people that don't have that skill, that don't know how to do it, and that are still somehow in the analog world, maybe a little bit digital, but not at all. Like, there's going to be a huge gap, a huge difference.
And I think it's important that whether or not we use a tool or we don't use the tool, it's here to stay. And it depends what you're doing. I have a lot of friends who are writers, and they will not use it at all. And I totally agree with that, because why would they? But why would you use AI? Because what's the satisfaction in that? There is an enormous satisfaction coming to the end of a book. Not that I've done it, but I've seen it in other people. Coming to the end of it and go, wow, I have done this. That is something to be really celebrated. Whereas if you use AI, what is the point in that? There's no satisfaction, and there's no humanness in that. I mean, an AI is getting clever and getting better. And yes, you could write a story with all the humanness in it now, quite easily. And that doesn't really seem like AI.
No.
But it's the depth of the human experience that is really important.
We keep our own voice.
I think we can, and I think that's the balance we have to go to, we have to find, is what's genuinely you or me, and what's genuinely helpful that AI can do for us. I've set up my business much quicker than I could have. I've set up the whole framework and everything else than I could have without the help of AI.
Yeah.
Now what I'm looking at is moving that forward, scaling it, and I couldn't do that either. I do not have those skills. I just don't. So with the help of AI, I'm the sort of person who wants to learn and who was always educating myself in one way or another. I never stop learning. So I don't just want it to do it for me.
Yeah.
I want to understand what it's doing, why it's doing, the impact it have, and I want to learn as I'm going.
Yeah.
So the next time, and hopefully with my clients, then I will have a lot more knowledge where I can help them further as well.
So it's also about the curiosity, I think, to not take it like, okay, it's done it for me, but you have to have a certain mindset to really want to understand and to dive deep, because then you're still adding your skill to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't detract from the humans. In fact, if you listen to the seminar I did at the weekend, and I got totally brainwashed into it.
Oh, yeah.
Totally brainwashed.
Yeah. What was your biggest takeaway?
I think the fact that AI buys you back time to be more human, not less human.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
The AI doesn't take the humanity away from it, it takes the mundanity. So therefore you are no longer managing all your life stresses, you are creating your own destiny because somebody else is managing all the things that can be managed on all the stresses and strains you have in the day or through your business or whatever that looks like to you. So all those things that quite honestly suck your time, but don't actually move your business forward. And then it frees your time up to do the things that are human. It gives you more time to be human and do the things that do move your business forward, things that AI can't do, things that are human and require human input and impact.
And it aligns very much also with the philosophy that I had when I started building this app, because I felt like the stories are also very personal, and they are what makes us human. And they also are, when we tell our stories, it makes us unique. Like it's only we have that story to tell, and only we have that experience. And maybe we forgot about it, and maybe we don't give even meaning to that experience because it already happened. And that's usually, you know, when we're good in a skill, it's the same thing. We don't think it's important because it's natural to us. But it's the same with our stories. And I felt like with AI, we can bring it back to life, and AI can help us to dig deeper, so it surfaces them, so we can use them, and then we can still use AI to write for us and to create it, but the experience is only something that we can maybe with a therapist or with somebody, like an interview, you know, like it surfaces thoughts and things. But that's also a function that AI can do, not just create the output, but actually make us dig deeper into ourselves, into why things are important and why this mattered, how did that experience shape, and like things that, for instance, I never thought about when I was telling stories, because stories have been a big part of my life always. I also used to do theater, and I used to also read stories. Even when my mom was reading stories to my sister, I was always in the background, and I was doing theater play to the story. So she would say like, and he fell off something, and I was like, and I fell. And so I was,
you'd be great. You have to meet my husband.
With everything that's happening now, it's getting so much more meaning, but we forget about it. And then when I started this journey on storytelling, I actually came to so many things, like it opened up, and then there's this, and there was this lesson and that lesson. So, and that's what I think AI can do for us. It can really help us to find more meaning into experiences. So that's
also it can act as our therapist to a certain extent. I mean, I find it a very cathartic experience using the storytelling act. I find it extremely cathartic. That's why I say it made me cry in one part. I think it's so many uses. You have to find the use that works for you. And I totally agree with you that the uniqueness, the human side, comes from each of us as individuals in our own right. Nobody else has that story. No. Only we do.
Yeah.
But it can free up the time for you to be able to explore that.
Yeah.
And that's where your uniqueness can come through.
Do you have like one big takeaway that you want to give to listeners, viewers about the app or storytelling in general?
My biggest takeaway is that I think you would be surprised. You will be surprised. Try it, use it, and you will be surprised what comes out of it. but you have to use it with slightly open mind in that you have to input when it asks you stories. I input quite a lot into each of the questions that I was asked. The more you input into it, the output will be more reliable, more accurate, and more like you.
So thank you very much for insights and sharing openly and this chat. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you too.